Given the challenges thrown by the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent digital opportunities, we are launching a brand new virtual entrepreneurship series, Demystify.Disruption 2021, Unplug, Unsettle, Unfold, in collaboration with etprime.com. This is to understand and discuss the challenges and new avenues thrown open by the current crisis, especially with reference to established ventures, upcoming startups, and entrepreneurs.
The series aims to define, delineate, and discover inspiring lessons out of the stories, experiences, trials, and tribulations of leaders, doers, and influencers who have driven disruption and progress in diverse domains by navigating through keynotes, virtual dialogues, thematic discussions, one-on-one interactions, and fireside chats. We would now like to invite the captain of the ship, ESL faculty mentor, Dr. Tripti Dhote, to please come forward and launch this grand event.
Good morning, respected director, sir, faculty and staff at SIDTM, the editorial and brand team, ET Prime, the corporates from InMobi, Vasudha Agarwal in particular, from Applause, the team from Applause who's attending this event, and my dear students. On behalf of Symbiosis Institute of Digital and Telecom Management, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to the curtain raiser to this virtual entrepreneurship series 2021, Demystify Disruption, Unplug, Unsettle, Unfold. And just as Mr. Prasad mentioned in his welcome address, understand too, in association with etprime.com. Every year we have been organizing this flagship entrepreneurship summit for an entire day offline. This was in an auditorium where we would have a confluence of entrepreneurs from diverse domains sharing their perspectives through a keynote, through panel discussions, or even coffee table conversations. Every year we have, however, in 2021, if you look at it, it's a bit unique. We know the last 2 years have been a little different, a little difficult, tough. The new normal that we all are into today. Now, as we all are aware, the entire globe has undergone crucial changes following the COVID-19 pandemic. These transitions were brought along by the shifting consumer behaviors, the irregularities in the economy, and more dependence on technology. Being the front runners in techno-managerial education with digital and telecom management as our core, we decided to leverage digital technology to our best. And hence, the virtual entrepreneurship series is being launched by us today. Innovation, as they say, breeds disruption, and disruption is certainly the need of the hour, and therefore the theme, Demystify Disruption, wherein our endeavor is to get more clarity and better insights into the disruptive entrepreneurial ecosystem. Now, this virtual entrepreneurship series, ladies and gentlemen, has been the vision of our director, Dr. Abhijit Chirputkar, the objective being to encourage the startup culture through the institute, to instill the entrepreneurship spirit among students, to reduce dependency, to foster self-reliance, and to make the most of digital technology. Now, this year it is more special as SIDTM has entered into its glorious Silver Jubilee year. We have completed, or rather we will soon be completing 25 fabulous years of our existence in June 2021. The other milestone is that ET Prime, the premium digital content platform from the House of the Economic Times, has decided to associate and join hands with us in taking our entrepreneurial journey ahead as an equal partner. This e-series will be a year-long initiative, and our endeavor would be to unplug entrepreneurial revenue models, policies, and ecosystem, unsettle by getting a breakthrough in the mundane 9-to-5 mindset, unfold the best of entrepreneurial journeys, trials, tribulations, and also learn from their stories. And like Mr. Prasad mentioned, again, understand. There are a lot many new things and insights that we are going to gather and understand certain newer things which we probably will try to explore through these entrepreneurship series over this entire year. So today is the launch of the episode and that with the e-series, and the theme which we have selected for today is but obvious technology, gaming, and entertainment, which I feel is both relevant and contemporary. And I'm certain that over the next 2 days, you'll gather enriching insights and a rich treasure trove from the best in the domain. Day one, that is today, the 17th April 2021, in the first half, We open the session with Ms. Vasudha Agarwal, Managing Director Asia Pacific at InMobi, who will deliver a keynote address on mobile first order and mobile marketing in a post-pandemic world. The second half of the day will unfold an interesting immersive conversation in a fireside chat with Mr. Samir Nair, co-founder and CEO of Plus Entertainment, on the mass of niches redefining content in the digital context. Day 2, 18th April 2021 will see the unplugging of a thematic discussion, game point, evolution, avenues, and the way forward. And the participants and panelists include Mr. Siddharth Nair, co-founder and director AFK Gaming, Mr. Rajat Oja, CEO Gametronics, Mr. Sadiq Merchant, investment associate Lumikai Funds, Mr. Kshitij Anil Kumar, founder and CEO of Pacific Gaming. I hope and I'm sure that you're going to have a very inspiring two-day learning. And as I sign off, I wish to reveal that we have chosen FinTech as the theme for the E-Series episodes to be aired on 8th and 9th May 2021 via the Zoom platform. So happy listening. Wish you all the best.
Let me now introduce you to Ms. Vasudha Agarwal. Ms. Vasudha Agarwal is the SVP and Managing Director for Asia Pacific at InMobi. She is responsible for the P&L, revenue, strategic partnerships, and business for India, Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, and ANZ markets. She has been associated with InMobi since 2012 and has worn many hats in her time, from strategy to product management to business roles. Before her APAC role, she led the India business for InMobi, headed business development for APAC, and helped set up the global partner management and online inside sales business for InMobi. She has featured in the Campaign Asia Women to Watch 2020 list among the top 50 influential women in media and marketing in India for 3 successive years since 2018, and in the Economic Times Women Ahead list for 2018. She is also a champion of women leadership and initiatives for mentoring young women professionals with Pink Ladder and the She Leads Annual Summit. In today's keynote session, Vasudha ma'am will be expressing her thoughts on mobile first world order and mobile marketing in a post-pandemic world. I now request Vasudha ma'am to kindly address the gathering.
Thank you so much for that introduction, sweetie. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. It's a real pleasure to be doing this keynote in this gathering of students and professors. And I'm really sort of excited. I saw the video just before this, excited to see the theme for this virtual entrepreneurship series and quite relevant to the times, Demystify.Disruption. And really hope you have an exciting 2 days ahead. So with that, let me dive into the topic for today. Let me share my screen. Like Sweetie introduced, today in the next 20 or 25 minutes, we'll talk about mobile first world order and mobile marketing in a post-pandemic world. And you'll see in the next couple of minutes why this has become extremely important, especially in the context of the last 1.5 years, where the world has undergone a massive shift when it comes to things like mobile screen time, data usage, the kind of apps we are using on our phone, and what it really means for a new world, which is going to be primarily mobile first. And then in the last 15 minutes, we'll take up some questions that were shared in advance. So let me go into this. So let me share a few stats, which are, first to give you a worldwide view, right? And how mobile has really taken over the world in the last year or so. If you see in the last year, about 321 million new internet users, came online worldwide. And if we move to the kind of hours being spent on mobile phones, almost 4.2 hours a day are being spent on the mobile phone by an average user last year. Looking at the stats of some of the app downloads, right, and how that is changing, if you see, there was a 25% growth in app downloads in first half of last year compared to the previous year. And similarly, if we look at things around, time, around money spent, consumers have spent almost $143 billion on the App Store, right? This is in things like in-app purchases or buying, apps and subscriptions and so on. And what also, if you see, the last number is around mobile advertising, right? Brands have spent, advertisers have spent almost $240 billion on just mobile ad spends last year. So all of these numbers are just to give you a sense of how, the world is really becoming a mobile first, and how it's ushering in a new sort of economy altogether. India, if you see, has really been leading from the front when it comes to a mobile first economy. In fact, some of these stats are even more mind boggling than the worldwide numbers, right? If you see, India has actually now 734 million users whose first screen, primary screen, is mobile, right? India accounts for 14% of the world's downloads of apps. And if you look at some of the stats around time spent, almost 5 hours a day, or an average user, right, spends on their mobile phones. Last year, there's been a 37% growth in time spent on mobile. And I think the last number is something which has completely exploded with the 4G adoption wave in the country, is 11 GB of data consumption per user per month. I think for most of us, we couldn't have imagined this number just 3 years back. And the x-axis at the bottom is different categories of products and services, and the y-axis is sort of the representation of the last decade, right, every few years. Now, if you see a decade back in 2010 when we started, every category of product service did not have an app, or had very few apps to really talk about it, because everything was in the physical or the offline space, right? Maybe you had one or two apps starting off in the entertainment space, like YouTube and Saban, maybe a few handful of shopping apps like Flipkart and Snapdeal and Myntra and so on. It was not heard of. Things like hyper local delivery, food delivery were not at all heard of. Gaming, yes, there was gaming, but mostly these were global gaming apps making their presence felt in India. So really just a very small section of the economy getting represented by apps. And if you jump to 2020, right, a decade later, almost every category has a mobile app to offer some sort of a product or service. And within every category, you have multiple players and competitors, right? So right from edutech to fintech to healthcare, everything now is available as a mobile-based app or service. So if you see, it really shows the evolution of the mobile app ecosystem in the country in the last decade, and how tremendously it has caused an impact in our lives. And if you look at COVID has actually accelerated some of these changes, right? The three big category gainers in 2020 were actually, in three big categories, right? For example, one was this whole hyper local e-commerce category of shopping, food delivery, and so on. The second big category was entertainment, right? Things like OTT, short form video apps, casual gaming apps. All the entertainment apps saw a massive growth. And lastly, of course, fintech, right? Anything to do with digital payments and wallets and credit-based apps, all of that took sort of a big plus. So these three categories really were the biggest gainers in the last year because of people working remotely and spending a lot more time on their phones. Now I know that gaming is a theme, for this 2-day session as well, and I did want to touch upon that because India has really sort of propelled to the forefront when it comes to the gaming ecosystem, right? If you see, we are sort of topping the charts when it comes to the increase in number of games played each month by the average user, right? Almost 35% increase when it comes to the monthly average consumption of games. And the interesting part is that gaming is no longer limited to just urban audiences or male gamers, right? You have women gamers, you have all age groups playing games, you have gaming happening not just in tier 1 cities but beyond tier 1 cities, right? So gaming has really become a widespread phenomenon in the country. Similarly, if we look at short form videos, right? I'm sure in this group there are a lot of people who used to be, on TikTok or TikTokers and so on. And with TikTok going away from India, a lot of other short form video apps have come to the forefront. And they are catering to one important thing, right? People have short attention spans these days, and that's what those videos cater to. They cater to that, sort of giving people that instantaneous, gratification and entertainment, a sense of virality and connect, right? So really a lot of time being spent on short form video apps, right? And if you see during the pandemic, it actually served as a big relief to people, right? It completely democratized your ability to create content, because all you needed was a mobile phone to create a video of a food recipe or a fitness video, or of your favorite song, and you could just be online in a matter of minutes with just a mobile phone and an internet connection, right? So really it's become completely democratized when it comes to creation of short form videos in the new world order. Similarly, let's look at mobile commerce, right? The third big category, apart from entertainment and fintech, which has seen a big explosion. So mobile commerce was already very big in India till maybe 2 years back, but it's actually gone even further, right? And we had done a survey on the InMobi platform around Diwali time, and what the survey indicated was that pretty much if you look at these stats, right, almost 63% people are using mobile to learn and discover about products. And this is not limited to urban areas. 77% people are using to explore and research about products, right? And that again is a very, very interesting, because that means that, almost 8 out of 10 people are doing that. And 62% people are actually using mobile to make purchases, right? And the great part here is that because you have literally every you don't have to do a very linear journey, right? There's the opportunity to learn and explore and research and buy everything in a very non-linear, very, very sort of continuous fashion when it comes to mobile. So commerce is definitely a category which exploded on mobile. So, with that, right, first economy, and the world order is changing and will continue to change, right? As people spend more time at home, as there is, more time spent on mobile, you will continue to see some of these categories increase and go up. But what does then this mean for marketers, right? Because when consumer behavior is changing so drastically, then as marketers they also have to rethink their strategy, rethink how they execute their marketing campaigns and plans. So that brings us to this part, right, which is talking about mobile marketing maturity and why that's very important in this new world. So if we talk about mobile marketing maturity, again, we had actually done a report on this last year where we had surveyed, middle to senior level marketers across India and Southeast Asia to understand what their take is in terms of navigating this new world order, right? And how would they sort of quantify and say where they are on this curve of digital marketing maturity. So if you look at this whole curve, right, there's actually sort of 4 phases to it, which we've defined, right? It's going right from what we call the nascent stage, where you're in the early stages of moving your marketing strategy and execution to digital, to the extreme sort of, if you look at the right at top, which is the multi-moment stage, right, which is where you have achieved a high degree of maturity and expertise when it comes to your marketing strategy on digital. And most brands in India today lie between this nascent to multi-moment stage. And there is of course different stages of maturity for each sector, right, depending on where they stood in the past. But really, if you look at it, is all about moving from but this is no longer an option, right, for brands. This is not an option to say I will or will not move to digital. It is a must do and a must have now to move to digital, right? And if you look at The next slide, you will see here that different sectors actually have achieved different levels of digital marketing maturity. So if we talk about e-commerce, for example, right, the first bar in the graph, you will see that e-commerce and m-commerce, there's actually 18% of the respondents actually said that they have achieved the highest level of digital marketing maturity, which is extremely interesting and heartening to see, which means that they are using advanced technologies when it comes to digital. They are using things like omni-channel, multi-channel touch points with their consumers. They are doing a lot more on things like consumer intelligence and consumer segmentation on digital. So e-commerce or m-commerce as a sector seems to be fairly evolved when it comes to digital marketing maturity. And then, there are others, right? If we look at, for example, FMCG as a sector, most marketers or no one said that, they have reached the highest level of digital marketing maturity. In fact, a good chunk, right? If you see, almost 57% felt that they are still in the emerging stage, right? Which is the second stage of maturity, where they are still sort of, figuring things out when it comes to digital. They're looking at different channel activations separately, and still their digital marketing strategy may be running siloed to other channels like TV and print and so on, right? So really what this indicates is that there is a struggle when it comes to digital marketing in the ecosystem, and that struggle is very real, right? Because like we saw in the first section, the consumer pace of evolution is very, very fast, and brands and advertisers have to continuously evolve to keep up with that pace. But I think the great part is that everyone understands that struggle and realizes that they need to do something about it, right? And so I would say that, for India as a market, digital marketing maturity is essentially about mobile marketing maturity, right? Digital equals mobile now, because India is clearly a country and a nation where mobile is the first screen now, and it is no longer, the second screen or just another screen for users. And most of the next set of consumers in the country who are actually coming online are coming online on mobile. They are not coming online, on a desktop or a laptop or a PC or anything. So really, when even as marketeers, they're thinking about digital marketing maturity and how to handle this new world order, they are thinking of it as mobile marketing maturity. And what does this mean? And we'll not go very deep this section, but I will leave you with some thoughts and pointers, especially for a lot of you who might be thinking of marketing and digital marketing as areas that you want to go further into in the course of your journeys. So couple of sort of 3-4 points which are very important when it comes to building mobile marketing maturity for brands and for marketeers. I think the first is, asking yourself whether you are actually thinking of consumers in the right way, right? Are you gathering the right intelligence, the right data, which will help you with actionable insights to drive your marketing strategy? Because mobile is a very powerful medium when it comes to being data driven and insight driven. So as marketers, it's important to leverage that, right? The second is around the technology stack, right? Because again, the mobile ecosystem, while it is one screen, it is complex, right? Because a consumer could be spending time on one mobile website, next they could be within a game, third they could go to buy something from an e-commerce app. So it's a complex ecosystem. So investing in the right technology stack to gather this data, to make it actionable, to be able to target users, build the right marketing campaigns which are personalized for users is a complex world. And so knowing the right technology stacks and tools becomes very critical. I think the third is around the experiences that you create for user, right? If we think of the traditional world of, say, maybe TV, right? Having the right storyline in the ad, having the right, emotional connect with the user in the ad, the right creative in the ad was very, very critical to the success of an ad campaign on TV. Similarly, on mobile, right? It becomes even more important because you have lesser attention span from the user. So how do you leverage things like mobile video ad experiences to really engage your users on mobile. And lastly, I think the world is moving very fast when it comes to ways of buying, mobile, or ways of buying mobile advertising, and everything is moving to things like automation and AI and programmatic based advertising. And so getting well versed in these things, right, around programmatic ad buying and maximizing your efficiency of marketing, again, will be very critical going forward for anyone in this space. So with that, I think we talked about this, and really, as marketers of tomorrow and people who will be, sort of coming in the world of mobile marketing as the go-to channel and go-to strategy for marketing, sort of taking the box on all these 3-4 things is very, very important. Mobile first consumer intelligence and data insights, building the right creatives and ad experiences on mobile for consumers, understanding new technologies like in-app programmatic, like automated buying, like auction-based buying. These are very, very important technologies to stay ahead of. And then, of course, how do you drive personalization? How do you do measurement of your mobile marketing campaigns? These are very critical to build a holistic, mobile marketing plan in the new world order. So, I'll sort of give you a few quick examples of some of this. If you see in the first one, right, which is understanding mobile data signals and understanding mobile consumers, you'll see, I'll quickly, show a video where you'll see how one of the big FMCG brands, Dove, really use a lot of data signals to come up with personalized experiences for its users, right? And for different sort of women segments, and targeting those women segments depending on this very data driven strategy. The second, we'll also show you a quick example of engaging experiences on mobile, right, which is the whole gamification and video experience. So we'll quickly show you that also in the video that was done by one of the brands in India, Kingfisher, very engaging experience on mobile video. And lastly, on in-app programmatic, right? How do you invest in the right technology stack? How do you reach audiences that matter, right, for your brand, for your marketing strategy? Again, there'll be an example in the video which will talk about this. So let me play that for you so that it becomes more real and experiential for you.
2020. The that brought the entire human race to embrace and engage in a different normal. A normal which radically changed the way consumers and brands interacted globally in ways that we never imagined. Stay safe, stay home were the 4 golden words. Consumers spent more time in front of the mobile screen, keeping the economic engines of our society running. Brands responded to this shift through unseen innovation to understand, identify, engage, and acquire consumers. Citizens, while still reeling in shock with the onset of the pandemic, were educated to stay home in a fun and engaging way with Kingfisher's innovative stay-at-home campaign. While constrained on mobility, women across Indonesia sensed a new liberation and confidence as they expressed themselves and shared their stories through Dove's My Hair, My Say campaign. At a time when almost every individual was confined to a single location, their home, Mondelez ensured that it took the initiative to deliver joy and happiness at the consumer's doorstep with a swipe and a tap. Misho helped millions of women entrepreneurs across Tier 1, 2, and 3 cities with an opportunity to start their online businesses with zero investment. In this new world order, it is imperative that brands drive real connections with their customers. 2021 is here, And it is time to leverage the power of mobile to connect with your consumers in ways that matter. InMobi, driving real connections.
So I think, with that, I wanted to leave you with that video so that, you can, it actually shows the application of, some of the things that we talked about. Basically, sort of 4 key points, right? If I were to summarize, one is around using mobile as a source of the right consumer intelligence and data signals so that you know how to reach the right audience and target audience on mobile. Second is around creating the right mobile creative experiences, especially on video, because consumer engagement is absolutely critical when it comes to mobile, especially because of shorter attention spans. That again, these emerging technologies become very, very critical. And lastly, around how to personalize the message in the mobile marketing campaign, how to measure the right KPIs in the marketing campaign. That again becomes very important in the sort of new mobile marketing world order. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and we can go into the questions that I think the team had shared in advance.
So the first question is about laying a solid foundation for any startup is extremely important. But is there any single way to achieve this? Our first question from Rishabh Roy is along similar lines. I request Rishabh to go ahead and ask your question to ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this wonderful session. It was very enlightening and thought-provoking for all of us. So, ma'am, my question is there a common path for a startup to undertake at the initial stages and become established, like going from zero to become an established company? And what are the steps that were taken by mCoach initially and become a pivotal role for mCoach and become InMobi?
Okay, thanks, Rishabh, for that question. I think it's definitely an interesting one and very relevant for the themes that you guys have for these 2 days, right? So I think, see, to be honest, every startup has their own journey, because it actually gets defined by, things like the sector or the external environment, or, the market size that you're in, and especially then also by the founding team and, the leadership team that drives it. So I wouldn't say that there is a standard playbook to it, but I think the common factor is, picking a problem in the ecosystem and trying to solve for it with a vision for the future. And I think that's how mCoach had started back in the days, trying to solve the problem of local information, right? Using SMS-based search. And the monetization model was, SMS-based monetization as a revenue model. And that was the time, when mobile was off in the country, and, PCs were not at all prevalent. But I think, after the initial days, there was a realization that, the model was not faring out as well as expected, right? Because in India, especially, there was a cultural aspect where every individual on the road was a source of information and high quality information for people. And, looking at SMS-based search or SMS-based information was not really something which was flying off, right? Or that users wanted. So a few months in, the team then, decided to make a decision to pivot. And I think it proved to be a huge turning point in the whole journey for mCoach, which finally, became InMobi. And the decision was to move away from SMS-based, search and focus on the mobile web ecosystem, which had started to show signs of something which had a lot of potential. And then eventually there was also, an evolution which happened to the mobile app ecosystem when Android and iOS came into play. So I think it's important for any startup to, keep an ear to sort of the problems on the ground. How is the ecosystem evolving, and make sure that you're also evolving your business model accordingly. Because I mean, without that, there are always possibilities to, that you risk failure, because digital and mobile as an ecosystem moves very, very fast. And if you're not continuously adapting, you probably risk, more chances of failing. So yeah, so that was possibly, the journey from mCoach to InMobi for us.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for the illustrious response to that question. The next question, it hovers around the transformation of entrepreneurs. So I would request Naina Sir to kindly go ahead and ask a question.
Question would be, like, how can we transform necessity entrepreneurs to opportunity entrepreneurs?
Sure. So, I'll be honest, Naina, I actually, before you asked this question, I didn't know that, there were two different kinds. So I looked it up. But yeah, let me answer that. So, I think necessity entrepreneurs, of course, we've had a lot of that in India, right? Because there's a large ecosystem of SMEs and self-run businesses and so on. Versus now where, a lot more people take that plunge into entrepreneurship more consciously, right? They find an opportunity and then, find a way to start a business based on that opportunity. So that's a shift which has happened possibly in the last, 10 years. And it's linked in a lot of ways to, how rapidly mobile and associated technologies have grown in the country. I think, transforming the first group, which is necessity entrepreneurs to opportunity entrepreneurs, is potentially a thing of, also skill development, right? Helping the first group to identify, what is a large problem or large opportunity in the ecosystem, but also then how to scale that using digital or mobile technologies, right? Because that's what makes something really sort of go, you can say, into a very sort of large multiplier effect, right? Once you marry technology to a traditional business, it can really scale things at a very different level. So I think that's one critical aspect of it, right? The digital and mobile technology skill building. And second is around, of course, the capital needed to scale something. We've always, like traditional businesses used to run with more traditional forms of capital, but now again, you have a whole venture capital ecosystem to support that. So also, how do you tap into that ecosystem is another, I would say, learning and, for the group of necessity entrepreneurs. So I think marrying technology to the business and also tapping into the new ecosystem of funding is what can help us transform this group.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for explaining us this in such a crisp manner. So, ma'am, we are moving on to the next question, which is from Sai Rupa Neta, and it is regarding entrepreneurship and innovation. Sai Rupa, you can go ahead and ask your question to ma'am.
A very good morning, ma'am. First of all, I would like to thank you for such an insightful session. My question to you is, what do you think are the barriers for the development of entrepreneurship and innovation in current knowledge-based economies?
So, that's an interesting question, because we've been talking about mobile and technology and so on. And I honestly think that, given where we are today, access to technology is no longer a huge challenge, right? Because with the whole 4G and smartphone wave, that's been truly democratized, that access has been truly democratized. So that really is not a challenge. But I would say one of the challenges is a lot around, especially for startups, is to find the right founding team, right? And also a leadership team which will then take risks and move the vision of the founding team forward. So I do think that, since this is a new world era of, knowledge-based economies, finding that right group of people initially, whether it's the founders or the leadership team to move it forward, becomes very critical, right? Because those are the people who define the DNA of the company, the vision of the company going forward. You need that talent pool, right, with the right skills and continuously training them for innovation. So that's what I think creates really sort of differentiated companies and startups, the right sort of team, and then also building the next set of team to drive that innovation and vision forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So now including the next question, The marketing domain is evolving day by day with the emergence of the latest trends. And the next question is also along the similar lines. I would request Sumukh Pote to kindly ask your question.
Yeah, am I audible and visible?
Yes,
Can you
Sumukh,
please
you are.
confirm? Yeah. So first of all, good morning, ma'am. The session was very much enlightening. I would like to ask, like, what are the new trends that are emerging in marketing domain due to adoption of marketing cloud?
So obviously, we talked about some of those earlier also in the session today, Smoke. But to reiterate some of them, I mean, I would say there are a lot of emerging technologies, right? I mean, we talked about programmatic and auction-based advertising. That's a huge one, and that's going to be only growing in India in the next sort of 18 to 24 months. And we do expect that, programmatic advertising will become the main model of buying in the course of this time frame. Similarly, I would say, there is a lot of work happening around use of AI and ML predictions in advertising, right? To predict things like what will be, the user behavior on a particular ad, which, creative will work better from a user engagement perspective. What do you expect, the different metrics to be in an advertising campaign? So a lot of AI, ML prediction models are being used in advertising. So that's another emerging and very interesting area when it comes to the domain of mobile advertising. And I would say the third, maybe very interesting one, you saw some glimpses of it in the video that I played, is around the use of audio, sort of the whole AR, VR, explosion, right? Virtual reality, augmented reality technologies in mobile ad campaigns, right? So building very, very immersive and experiential creatives on mobile. And see, some of these technologies were not possible to use in the traditional advertising world of, say, television and so on, right? But now, because you have a device and a screen in the palm of your hand, a lot of these innovations are possible on that device, right? And I think those are exciting spaces, and we'll see more getting added because this space evolves very, very fast. So you should definitely keep an eye out for the new ones in a year. But I would say these 2 or 3 are definitely exciting to me at the moment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, next we have a very interesting question which revolves around brands and technology providers. So I request Rajsi Sharma to ask your question to ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Ma'am, my question is, how can brands and technology providers strike the right balance between leveraging the first-party data alongside alternative privacy-compliant forms of targeting?
So thank you for asking that, Rajsi. I think that's a very pertinent question in today's time, right? And already you'll be hearing or must be hearing the changes that different companies and operating systems are making. So I mean, iOS has released and will be releasing sort of changes where they are going to limit ad tracking of users and ask users for explicit opt-in and consent if they want to be targeted or not targeted by an ad. Similarly, Google has declared that they will be deprecating all of the cookie sort of ID ecosystem that used to allow tracking of users on web. So we are headed in a direction of fully privacy compliant form of data collection and usage when it comes to users, and it is with the right intent, right, to ensure that user privacy is at the core of everything. But what this means for brands when it comes to advertising and targeting is that they will also need to create the right opt-in and consent frameworks to collect data from users, right? Especially first-party data collection from users. When brands do that, they will need to make sure that they have user consent. They'll need to make sure that whatever data they are using for targeting is opted in by the user, because all of these changing regulations will no longer allow you to just collect user data without that. So that's one, right? Having the right user opt-in framework. The second is also, I think, finding alternate ways of the right targeting, right? And again, for that, there is a lot of work that's already happening by different, platforms and brands. But basically, things around, for example, contextual targeting, right? That without knowing who the user is, you know what environment the user is in, right? For example, if they are playing a game or are they in an OTT app, if you know the environment of the user, then you can, sort of target them with a far more contextual, ad, right? So looking at some of these alternate ways of targeting the user will evolve much more. So I think that's how brands will have to tackle the new world of privacy compliance and first party data.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the answer.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for an interesting take on that question. So now we have the last question, which is very relevant to the theme of game advertising, and it will be taken up by Swati Rai. Swati, please go ahead and ask your question.
Very good morning, ma'am. So thank you for the insightful session. So my question is, how do you think the dynamics in game advertising has improved the whole scenario of advertising?
Yeah, thanks, Swati. So I think, like you said, I think it's a topic for these sessions as well. And you saw in my presentation also, right, how the gaming ecosystem has completely exploded in India in the last year or so. So it definitely offers a very, very interesting opportunity for brands, right? And see, the interesting part of that is that it's a highly engaged environment for users, right? Gaming. And if brands are able to leverage the right kind of ad formats or ad experiences, right? Things like video, things like native integrations, things like, in-game integrations, right? Where you could possibly see the logo of a brand or the product of the brand integrated in the game itself, right? So these are some interesting ways that brands are, starting to leverage gaming for advertising. And in terms of audience, earlier there used to be this apprehension that gaming is only young kids or users who are playing the game. But again, you saw the data, right? That everybody is a gamer now, from women to men, from kids to older people, from tier 1 cities to rural areas. Everybody is playing games, which means that for brands, again, it offers them the opportunity to reach any target audience that they want. They don't have to worry that it's a very niche audience anymore. So yeah, so I think in that sense, both the creative experiences and the audiences, this is the opportune time for brands to be looking at in-game advertising.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering all our queries so patiently. We're extremely grateful for you to enlightening us with various terminologies that are prevalent in the world of mobile marketing.
Thank you, Arush. Pleasure is all mine.
If I just could take a minute, and thanks ever so much, Vasudha. And it was an amazing session. We definitely are riding on a mobile maturity wave, and concepts like programmatic buying, or maybe even relevance of contextual hyper advertising and all, which we have done some studies and also propose to pursue that in the future. So thanks ever so much for having accepted our invite. And over to you, Arush and Sweetie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would now request Professor Avinash Aslekar, sir, to express his gratitude to Vasudha, ma'am, on behalf of SIDTM.
Thank you very much, Vasudha, for joining this session and sharing your thoughts on digital marketing. First of all, you nicely explained how the digital shift has taken place from 2020. Maybe the use of digital content, the use of applications, the hyper-local delivery. In fact, our academic delivery also got entirely through this. And then we had a totally different experience, maybe a lot of difficulties also. You also nicely explain as to how the pattern of usage of applications has changed, and how the face of entertainment is also changing, and how the mobiles are being used for learning, exploring and buying. And then and you nicely connected it to digital marketing after that. So, and I was surprised to know that digital marketing maturity is very low, 12% in brands. Is that the truth? I'm not very sure, but since you are showing the data, so there is a lot of scope for digital marketing, I believe. Um, and then how to build that also with AI and ML, all that. So Vasudha, you gave very nice insights on that, and I think it will be very useful for our students, to take it forward, and maybe they can look at this as a sort of opportunity to venture into new areas, because there is a lot of space to play with. That's what you said. Thank you, Vasudha. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Vasudha ma'am, that was indeed a very insightful and engaging session. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you once again, everyone. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, ma'am.
After a sparkling first session, it's time we move on to our next exciting agenda. I would request Dr. Tripti Dhote to please start the fireside conversation with Mr. Sameer Nair.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the second session. The year 2020 has been disastrous, as you all know, and it will be remembered as the year of the pandemic, impacting everyone and everything worldwide. But at the same time, I think it was a very disruptive year for entertainment and content, as people were confined to their homes. And this way, the only source of rejuvenation was content and entertainment through various channels like the mobile, television, and OTT platforms. So we decided to demystify disruption in content and understand how it is being redefined in the new normal. And who else could have done it better than the man himself, who's been there through the evolution and the transition of content, the man who's known for his magical turnaround strategies. Like I refer to him as the King Midas of content in India. It gives me immense honor and pleasure to welcome the co-founder and CEO of Applause Entertainment, Mr. Sameer Nair. And we are going to move on with the first segment, and that segment is game shows, sitcoms, and prime time. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So it's about game shows, sitcoms, and prime time. So let's get talking about the other side or the latter half of maybe 90s. It was the Indian sitcom era, and game-based reality shows were not getting the desired market. So would you like to say some highlights on the audience behavior and the mindset in the sitcom era, and what was your feedback mechanism to get cues for content?
Well, honestly, I wouldn't call it a sitcom era. The 90s actually was a period when India was coming out of Doordarshan as a single TV universe, and the rise of satellite TV. So there were a whole bunch of satellite channels that launched in the early 90s and then kept growing through the 90s. So there was Zee TV and Sony, and there used to be Home TV and Gen TV and all sorts of things, and Star TV, of course, which was the the definitive big brand. And Zee and Sony actually, in a way, were the primary domestic Indian channels, and in South India, of course, Sun TV, there was Asianet, so all over the country. So in that context, what was happening really was that it was a very vibrant period. I mean, I think Zee and Sony did a lot of incredible work in the 90s. And, there were a lot of shows, not just sitcoms. We used to do a show called SAS on Star Plus. Zee had a whole bunch of outstanding drama series. Sony had wonderful shows. There were reality shows. There used to be, I think, Antakshari. There was Saregama.
Yeah.
So it was all there. Shekhar Suman used to do the wonderful movers and shakers. Ekta had done what was that, Hum Punch. So there were all kinds of things, and DD Metro was still quite big at the time, And there were mythologies. There was something called Chandrakanta, if you remember.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of content was there in the 90s, and it was a very vibrant kind of period, and lots of things were being done, invented, movies were being shown, all of that was happening. I think our story is really in context of us in the environment rather than the audience per se. For Indians per se, it was a period of experimentation, of newness happening. We had all come from Doordarshan, right? So we had come from if some major leader or state dignitary dies, you have 3 days of blackout. So I mean, we've come from that environment. So suddenly you have 24-hour satellite channels and all of that. At that time, the story for us was really that Star Plus was sort of burdened with a joint venture that we had with Zee TV, which required Star Plus to be half Hindi, half English. So Star Plus as a channel used to be 50% Hindi, 50% English. So we used to do the news at 9 o'clock with Prannoy Roy. We used to do a whole bunch of English shows like, Rendezvous with Simi Garewal and all of that. And then we used to do Hindi shows like Tutu Meme and Saas and Kora Kagas. So it was a bit of a mixed bag for us. And so Star Plus was never really able to succeed because it always had half Hindi, half English. In the meantime, the market was growing. Sony and Zee were the big kings in town and they were doing really well. So in late 99, what happened is that the joint venture with Star and Zee came to an end. So when the joint venture with Star and Zee came, and I was fortunate enough to be the programming head at the time when it happened. So it was like, talk about good luck. So when that happened, the mandate to us and to me in particular was that now that we don't have no more handcuffs, let's go out and make a full-blown Hindi channel. So that is what actually triggered us in that direction of saying that we want to make Star Plus into a full-blown Hindi channel. At that time, I think, the relative market share was that Zee was about 12%, Sony was about 11%, and Star was about 2%, right? This is in 99, right? So, I mean, there was a huge distance. We used to always refer to ourselves as a distant third, right? And so it was in that context that we sort of set out to do what we did. So some of the things that came out of that, and I think your further questions are about that, is related to that environment. So I wouldn't say that the 90s was a period of sitcoms or anything like that. It was a period of very vibrant content. It was just that Star was not invited to that party. And so in 2000, we crashed the party.
Okay. So it was all like that. So like you have already mentioned about 1999 and how Star was, struggling to keep up. Maybe its competitors and its counterparts, especially in the prime time slot. And you just mentioned, I guess, 2% was the share?
2% was the share.
2% was the share,
Yeah.
okay. So which means that they were far behind in the TRP game.
Right.
And then I think I would like to divert your attention to July 3, 2000.
Right.
Okay, a date, I think, which will be inscribed in golden letters in the history of television in India.
Right.
And for most obvious reason. And I think this was the day which saw the launching of a mammoth, unending love story of the Indian audience with content. And, like you also mentioned that there were game shows like maybe Subsidy or the overwhelmingly popular Antakshari for that matter.
Right.
Or even there was a 1 minute game show.
Yes, of
8
course.
minutes, Anchor 8 minute on ZTV.
Yeah, of course.
Now, but how I look at it, and most of us would like to look at it as pre-KBC and KBC, because KBC is what I'm talking about. And we are talking about a lockdown right now. But I was a student then, and as an Indian audience, I have seen a curfew-like situation, which only maybe Ramayana and Mahabharata enjoyed,
Right.
kind of adulation that it enjoyed. So we would like to know from you, how was KBC conceived and what was your initial strategy in getting an already popular global hit show? It was, I think, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yeah?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
That
Right.
magical Indian twist and all those amazing rounds that were there, audience poll,
Right.
and all of that. So could you just take us through that?
So actually, I'll tell you, in July 99, when we were still half Hindi, half English, and we were still doing all of that and struggling away at number 3, my colleague from Hong Kong, Steve Askew, had come and given me a tape of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah.
And said that, hey, this is a show and take a look at it. And I took a look at it. It was really nice.
Yeah.
I am personally a big favorite. I mean, I'm very, very partial to quiz shows. I've been a big fan of Siddharth Basu from the 80s when he used to do quiz time on Doordarshan.
Right.
So, I've always liked quiz shows. And in fact, in the early 90s, when I first had a chance of doing some work on thinking of these lines, I'd actually made one note in one of my books, which said, bring primetime quiz back, right? Now, this was written in 93 or 94, so obviously it had no meaning. So in 99, when this thing came that let's go and become a full Hindi channel, and when I was asked by my colleagues that, what should we do? One of the first things I said was, hey, listen, let's do that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's a great show, so let's do it. So that was we had already got the rights for it. So we got the rights to the show. And then we started preparing and planning. So actually on July 3rd, just to sort of rewind a little, the thing was at 10:30 at night, very quietly, we also launched Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu. It launched at the same night.
Correct.
But when the show launched, it was all under the glare of KBC. It was all KBC. Now, KBC, of course, Millionaire was a brilliant show. It was a wildly successful show globally. And we, in a sense, took the exact same format and we just made it, we made it true to format. We didn't tinker around with it. We did everything exactly the way it was supposed to be done, which is why also, in a way, it turned out to be the smash monster hit it was, because we spent the money and energy and effort in genuinely making it like an international show. We didn't cut corners. We didn't do our standard Indian jugaad, ye chalta hai, wo chalta hai, nothing. I mean, like there was this one, one thing that we used to talk about on the set is that the parts that you can't see are made of stainless steel, right?
Even the phone a friend and all 50/50 and all was also custom.
Everything. It was exactly the same. In fact, we used the same music as the original. So all the da-da-da and do-do-do and the graphic, everything was identical. We didn't make any changes to it. Our big thing was that we got Mr. Bachchan on it, whom I was really fixated on at the time.
Absolutely.
That, that let's get Mr. Bachchan. And I was really keen to bring him on board. You must also understand that at the time, it was like, obviously now in hindsight, it appears that you got India's biggest superstar to come on TV.
Absolutely.
But at the time, while he was still India's biggest superstar, he was also, a bit of a fading superstar, down on his luck. Things were not really coming together. He had a string of, indifferent movies. So it was a sort of a mixed bag. And I'd been interacting with him since 94, 95. So I mean, I've done a lot of work with him via my tenure at Star Movies as well. So I thought that he'd make for a wonderful host. Not everyone agreed with that. And in fact, it took some convincing for him to do it. Most of his family and friends were against it. And in fact, we also got a lot of blowback from the media at the time saying that how can you do that? And how can you get the great Amit ji and reduce him to a game show host? Like how does that work? But I mean, kudos to him that he sort of, finally saw the, he saw the potential.
Yeah.
And I mean, finally it was his decision to make. I mean, I can do as much convincing as I want, but he has to decide, right? So it was his decision to make and he made it. And the only one thing I remember he told me when we were returning from London was that, to quote it in Hindi, he said that if you do this right, phad ke rakh denge. So I said, "Ha sir, hum log right hi karenge. I mean, we'll do our best. We'll do this right." And we came back and we did it right. I mean, we didn't leave a single stone unturned with regard to detail. Every last detail, everything. And Siddharth Basu, our entire team, all my people, all my colleagues working with me, the entire machinery of Star went behind making KBC into like the biggest show.
Correct.
And of course, thankfully it paid off because, I remember at that time, a lot of people in the industry were saying that, I mean, this has got to be such a bad idea. Who does a game show with English supers in prime time and quiz show at that? Not even a game show, it's a quiz show, right? I mean, Indians don't want to be asked questions and given answers and, who the hell want, and Amitabh Bachchan and kya kar rahe ho, yaar? So one of my colleagues even told me, at least take Govinda. So, so I mean, there's been many things, lad, but finally, it's in hindsight, it all turned out really well because, the amount of attention to detail we gave it, I think paid off. Okay. And then the show, as you remember, it released and it was a wild hit.
Blockbuster, absolute blockbuster.
The roads were empty, and even I know it's been often compared to how the roads used to be empty during Ramayana and Mahabharata. Similar thing happened in KBC, but you must remember that in Ramayana and Mahabharata there was only one channel, Doordarshan, right? Yes. When KBC happened, it was a vibrant multi-channel satellite environment. So I think our achievement was a little wilder than the Ramayana Mahabharata, Okay. But yeah, I mean that's what happened.
So that is why I'm saying that is pre-KBC and KBC, because after that also there were many game shows that came up like Sawal 10 Crore Ka, 10 Ka Daam, or even Kya Paanchvi Paas Se Tez Hai, with the biggest superstars. But I think apart from, of course, the prize money and the lifeline, the interesting lifelines, Mr. Bachchan's selection definitely for me was a masterstroke. And I think the audience will also agree with me, the students will agree with me. So now from KBC, the blockbuster, let us now move on. We come over to the era of Balaji Telefilms, Ekta Kapoor, and the humongously popular K Brigade.
Right.
So what was the biggest challenge in curating content for these long episodic shows like say Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki, Kasauti Zindagi Ke, or even Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi? And of course, the creative mindset behind the success of this daily show. How did you kind of redefine the prime time for them? Like Saas Bahu came at 10, I believe.
It came at 10. 10:30 was Saas Bahu, Kahani was at 10.
Okay.
It came 3 months later. So I'll tell you what, see, when it first, before KBC and before Kyunki, Indian television used to be essentially driven by weekly schedules. So all the dramas that were there, and there were shows similar to, what you call your typical Saas Bahu shows. It's not like this weren't being done, but they were all weeklies.
Sure.
Late at night or in the afternoon. Right? The daily soap in any case is all over the world is known as the daytime soap opera. Right? So it's an afternoon phenomena. Santa Barbara, Bold and Beautiful in the West were all afternoon phenomena. So I think the one big thing we did is, of course, Ekta came, she met me, and she told us about this show. Actually, her father had told me about the show first, then she told me about it. I really loved it. I said, okay, let's do it, and we commissioned it. It was being produced independent of us. Finally, the tapes arrived in the office. Colleagues of mine were a little concerned when they saw it, saying that, oh my God, what is this? Because, a lot of my colleagues at the time were also from, very, very fancy universities and colleges like Film Institute or Jamia or JNU or Jadavpur, all intelligent people in general. So, when you come in contact with a daily soap opera of that kind of mass entertainment variety, it does sort of, affect your sensibilities.
Sure.
So I think the good decision I took at the time was that I said that, listen, let's not meddle with this. This is, we should not tinker with this. We should let it be made. It's like an intelligent parallel cinema guy trying to explain to Manmohan Desai how to make a film. I don't think they should do that. I think they should leave it well alone and say that, let's release it. So that's what we did. So actually, Kyunki, when it released quietly on the back of KBC. But then as the month went by, it kept growing, right? And as it kept growing, we then very quickly, another he had another show called Untitled. So I said, wow, sounds good. Let's do it immediately. So then that came on at 10 and we kept building that up. So I think what happened is there are two parts. One is that Ekta's very unique brand of storytelling. Second is this, this very, this home and hearth kind of content, right? It's not taking people out. It's a very homely stories. It's stories about families and, relationships and all of that. The third was the daily soap. So you don't have to wait for your new episode till the next week. You get it the next day, right? And the fourth, the stripe of the schedule itself. So we used to do, at one point we had reached that we were doing daily soaps from about 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, right? And that is actually what Indian TV even today is. So if you go to all the GECs in the last 20, so in a way, the daily soap in prime time became the killer app of programming strategy. Right. So the shows itself have changed. And now today, like my mother now watches a show on Star Plus called Anupama, which she really loves. And she says, oh, it's such a lovely show and all of that. But in a sense, it's the same thing. It's a daily soap in prime time. Right. And so I think the daily soap strategy worked really well. Because suppose you looked at in 99, there were 3 channels with, say, 3 hours of prime time with half an hour weekly shows. So if you take 3 hours of prime time, that's 6 shows. If you take 5 days, that's 30. And if you take 3 channels, that's 90. So theoretically, a consumer has 90 things to choose from, to remember, to decide, and the programming was. We, in a sense, reduced it to 6, right? So you have daily soaps and you have KBC. So what do you need to remember? You need to remember KBC, Kyunki Kahani, Kasoti, Kahin Kisi Roz, right? And that's it. And your Monday to Friday is done. So you don't have to think of anything else. And you liked Kyunki Monday, so you will like Kyunki Tuesday. And then you like Kyunki Wednesday and you like Kyunki Thursday. What's there not to like, right? And as a strategy, it really worked out very well. And we kept building on it. We never let go of that thought. We didn't sort of shy away from it. They say that nothing succeeds like excess. So, I think we went for some serious success.
Okay. Oh, that's wonderful. And in fact, it was, I would say there's some sort of a slice of life and people could relate to that. The story of the mother-in-law and the Sas and Bahu fighting all the time, maybe. That was something in major homes in India where there are joint families, people were, they could relate to that possibly.
See, honestly, of course they could relate to that. And this has already been done before. So, in a sense, it's not that this was the first time a story like this was being told. We've already told these stories in cinema in the 70s and 80s. We've told these stories on TV itself. Even if you take other shows, if you take Kora Kagas, that also had a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law and a sister-in-law. If you take Tutu Meme as a comedy, that was a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law comedy.
Okay.
Right? Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law perpetually fighting. So these things have happened, In a way, I've always compared Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi as the Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, right? It's the same thing. Karan Johar made it on the big screen, Ekta Kapoor made it on the small screen. It's the exact same thing, It's all about loving your family,
Yeah, so that's why I was trying to say that the Indian audiences were trying to find their moments out there, all about loving your family and all sorts of little tidbits here and there from their own family. Okay, so that brings that brings us to the second segment, and it's about your television channel, your experience in television channels and beyond. So from kind of turning the fortunes of leading television channels with relevant content to making a switch with production houses. You again initiated with the video on demand. So please do share with us your experience of transformation and innovation with production houses, and how different was it in terms of the challenges and ecosystem.
But honestly, after I was done with NDTV Imagine in 2011, the one thing I really wanted to. This has been a dream of mine to set up a studio which makes content since 1999. So in fact, in 99, if I had not got promoted and become the head of programming of Star, I may have left Star and the studio. Right, that was my plan at the time. But then, of course, life went in a different direction, and then we did KBC, Kyonki, and all of that. So in 2011, when I got the opportunity, something I really wanted to do, but obviously it was not something that I had enough experience in. I didn't have enough knowledge or expertise. So it was a sort of a rocky start to it. So in 2011, Deepak Sehgal and me, my colleague who works with me even today, we did set up a production house. We made a couple of shows. We lost money on it. It was not the most wonderful experience, but it was good. And in any case, I felt from a long time that this what Netflix has done. And what Reed Hastings has been saying since, I think, 1999 is that in the next 5 years, everybody will consume content over the internet, right? Yes. And so it's not broadcast, people will consume content over the internet. But it always seemed like like some sort of a fanciful dream. Like, what are you talking about? In 1999, there was barely internet, barely worked. So, the question of consuming content over the internet is really sort of, it's a mirage. Yeah. But eventually what happened is that by 2012, 2013, I was like I knew that this is going to happen. I was trying to figure out how do I get into it, like what do I do? So that is the time when I had this wonderful opportunity to work with Balaji. So, Ekta and Shubhaji called me and they said that, listen, can you be an advisor to us? And then later, can you join us? And I thought the one thing that I don't have really good, solid hands-on experience is how does a production company work? Like what do they do? How do they do? What goes on in their life? And Ekta in the meantime had this big dream of wanting to launch her own app. She had always wanted to launch her own channel. And in fact, it has been often said that if you take all of Ekta Kapoor's shows on the various channels and you put them onto one channel, then that channel would be the #1 channel, right? But no, unfortunately, her shows have been on every channel. So we decided that, listen, let's start an OTT app, SWOD app, and let's build that. Let's do that kind of content, give her more control over her own destiny. And, sort of create that. It was exactly what I wanted to do because, there's a production house, they make movies, they make shows, and now we are going to build a streaming app. So it was a wonderful experience. I spent 3 years there, hired a team, built the app, launched the app. It's quite the sort of thing to do. And and I learned a lot. It was really wonderful working closely with the Kapoors to understand, how this whole business works. So yeah, that was a good experience.
So I think Shobha Kapoor and Ekta Kapoor have equal say in the creatives, or is it just that Ekta Kapoor is the one who is the decision maker?
Well, actually, it's interesting how they work. So they've got a very good way of working. So I think Ekta drives the creative, as in it's her vision and it's her thought, it's her mind that works. She's a wonderful storyteller. And Shobhaji is really the businesswoman. So she runs the business. She's actually genuinely the managing director of that company. So she doesn't come out so much in the open, and she's not really a public figure. But the fact is that she is an equal partner in their amazing success.
Okay. So, after this hands-on production house experience, though you mentioned that you did not, were not able to delve so much into the production house side, and you had this stint with Applause Entertainment. I guess it was 2017 when you joined Applause.
Yes.
And I think that was on the back of Applause, who had already they had already co-produced Black, if I'm not mistaken, with Mr. Sanjay Leela.
A long time back. That was in 2006 or 5 or something like that. Yes.
Okay. So when you joined Applause in 2017, and ever since you played a vital role there as well in growing this entire Indian digital video ecosystem, I would say. And could you highlight the major turnouts and transitions that you addressed, especially with reference to content?
So I'll tell you, when Applause actually came about with a conversation that I had with Mr. Birla, and I met him, and then we met and spoke, and he said, "So what do you want to do?" And actually, at the time, my first thought was that I wanted to, bring back my studio idea of 20 years ago. Right? And that's what he sort of bought into. So we decided to set up a new company. At the time, we were to figure out a name for the new company, that what would the new company be called. And I asked him, I said that you used to yourself have a company called Applause, so is it still there? They had in the meantime sort of, Applause had been dormant in the Birla system for the last 10, 12 years because they had, after it, they sort of wound it up. Not wound it up, but they just sort of let it be. They weren't interested in the entertainment business anymore. So he said, yes, I still have the company and the name is still there. I said, let's use the name because I really liked the name even then. I think Applause is a wonderful name. So if I can get the name, I'll be really happy. Otherwise, we'll have to think of a new name. And then, you get into that discussion and, what shall we call it? Illuminati and, this and all that kind of thing happens. So we found the name, we got the name and we got going. And essentially what I've done with Applause is built a company, which is a studio. So we are a content creation and IP ownership studio. What we do is that we work with a hub and spoke model. So we are the hub. We are a creative, marketing, and commercial hub. And then we work with a variety of talent and production partners to create content. So we work with BBC and Endemol and Bani Jay and Saul, anybody, Nikhil Advani, all kinds of people we work with. We work with excellent directors, excellent writers, and we are financing the business. So we are not looking to get greenlit. We've spent the money. To quote my show Scam, risk hai to ishq hai. So we are taking considerable risk in the hope of some reward at the end of it. And so that's how we set out to do it. And we said that, okay, let's do it. Because the way it's turned out is that TV now has reached 210 million homes, right? So TV is like a very, very mature and powerful medium. But in the meantime, what has happened in the last 10 years is that this is the rise of the mobile connected universe, right? And the internet connected universe. And after Jio arrived, it became the cheapest data in the world. So now suddenly you're talking about having a population of 900 million people who've got small devices in front of them. It's a very individualistic experience. And as globally we've seen with the examples of Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus, that the streaming business is the alternative to the TV business. It's not a replacement. It's one more thing. And it creates another audience. So that's what brings us to the mass of niches. That, TV was always a mass audience. And this business is a mass of niches. And in a country like India, we've got very, very big niches. So in any other country, you say, oh, that's a niche audience. Niche is usually used as a term to define something small, right? But in India, the niche is 50 million people, 80 million people. That's a niche for us, right? Because we are talking about 1.3 billion people. So when you talk about 1.3 billion people, for us, a niche is 100 million. In another, that would be the population of half of Europe, for example. So in India, with the whole geo revolution, with the whole connectivity, with all the smart devices, we've got a hugely connected audience. And they don't, what they get on TV, they get on TV. In any case, TV is the cheapest medium in the world, right? So TV is there in India. What they want is something new, something different, something more. And that is what this opportunity is. And that's what Applause does, and I think the whole industry is doing that. I mean, in the last 5 years, we've seen such incredible growth in the streaming business and the audience appetite. And the pandemic only helped. So this whole lockdown, while it's a real major human disaster, in an odd way, it really benefited the streaming business because with people locked up in the house, all that they could do was consume content.
Correct. Absolutely. I do agree with that. Yeah. And if I understand this hub and spoke model correctly, it's about like you are investing in creating content maybe on your side. And then for monetization, do you look at the other execution platforms and maybe the distribution networks? Is that the right way?
Exactly. So what we do is we invest in creating the content. Once we've created it, we go and license it to the distribution platforms, which is our streaming platforms. So which is, we do deals with Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus, Hotstar, MX Player, Sony Live, so many people. There's Z5, there's Eros, there's Voot, Geo Cinema. There are many people.
Okay. Samir, that brings me to a very remarkable statement which you had made in one of your interviews. I think that was Vidnet 2018. That was in 2018. And your statement was like, I quote, content is a commodity which cannot be won with price wars. How do you simplify that, and does it hold true even in 2021?
Yeah, it does. It always holds true. I'll tell you what happens with content is that, content is a funny thing. In any other product or service, what happens is that increased, input of money you can specifically measure improvement in quality, right? Yeah. So if you say, I'm going to make a hotel, that's why you have 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 5-star, 7-star, right? So it is a range of features, services, quality that keeps increasing, right? And that costs more money, and therefore you charge more money. With content, what happens is that there is no direct correlation between a great story and money spent, right? So there's no direct correlation, right? I'm telling you a story. So if I'm telling you a story, it may resonate with you and hundreds of millions of people, and I may have spent a fortune on it. If you remember a movie called Vicky Donor, it was called a classic sleeper hit, right? A sleeper hit is something that comes out. It's a small thing, unassuming. No one has any much worldview on it. And it comes out, and then it goes on to become a wild hit, right? And when it becomes a wild hit, the ratio of return on investment is completely absurd, right? Now, of course, it's not to say that therefore everyone can make a Vicky Donor and every movie that gets made is a Vicky Donor, and that's where usually the business fails. But the fact is that when you are creating content and when you are telling stories, how much money you spend telling the story does not necessarily make it a hit, right? It is the story. You got to tell the story, right? But on KBC, we spent, I think, 100 times the amount that we spent on, right? As in a daily soap versus a big giant game show with Amitabh Bachchan and Razzle Dazzle sets. Kyunki was a very dal chawal kind of program, right? So if KBC was like, wild 7-star cuisine, Kyunki was dal chawal. I would argue that over a longer horizon, Kyunki did much better for us than KBC. So KBC, in a sense, broke open the gates of Zee and Sony's fortress. But then what kept it all going was Kyunki and Kahani and Kasauti. Right? So I don't think money itself is an answer to anything. I think it is about ideas. It is about understanding audiences, about reading audiences right. That was Steve Jobs' biggest insight in life, that consumers don't know what they want, so you got to give it to them. I think it still holds true. Commodity is not content is not a commodity you can win with a price war.
I got that clearly, and I think it's an amazing way of looking at things. And I was going through this report of KPMG related to content, and it was also this report on mass of niches, which you just mentioned some time back. And there was something interesting written, so I have to quote that as well. That it's a little poetic, but context triggers content. Content creates behavior, and revenue models follow. Or revenue follows behavior. So could you quickly throw some light on the newer formats of revenue models that are coming up, or the newer revenue models and other implications? I think one of them, which I recently heard about, was pay-per-view by Book My Show. So what are the newer new models that have come up?
So actually, there are, honestly, in the world, there are only two ways of doing it. So one is that, somebody's got to pay for it, right? You should always use that as a base. So somebody's got no free lunch in the universe. So if the consumer doesn't pay for it, then somebody else has got to pay for it. So that has historically been supported by advertising.
Correct.
So, we create content and run channels, and then we have ad breaks, and the ad breaks pay for us creating content and running channels, right? So the advertiser has to pay. Why is the advertiser paying? Because we are delivering eyeballs. So because we are delivering eyeballs, the advertiser wants to reach those eyeballs. So they give us money to put their ads in the middle of our content, right? The other model is that we don't want an advertising interruption, because, a lot of consumers don't like advertising interruptions. That's why on the internet also, the most clicked button is skip ad, right? That's what you do. You always go to the cross and you close that window or the ad or the whatever that is. But if you want to skip the ad, then somebody still got to pay for it, right? Because somebody has to pay for it, right? There's no charity here. So now if you don't want to watch an ad, then you must pay for it, right? So then that becomes a subscription model, right? That is S-word. There's not much more to it. Like if you see historically, what has cinema been? Cinema has been that a movie is made, a movie is released in a theater, you go and buy a ticket, right? So it's a very, very clear subscription model. It's a retail revenue model. So when you go into the cinema to see the theater, to see the movie, there are no ad breaks. There's one interval that happens because Indians love intervals. I don't know. I think we want to eat samosa and popcorn. So rest mein to interval bhi nahi hota hai. So the real revenue model comes from the ticket sales, right? That's what they say in a box office hit 100 crores. That is 100 crores of ticket revenue. It's a ticket you bought, right? Now suppose you say I don't want to buy a ticket and I want to see the movie for free, then there will be ad breaks. So after surf ka ad dekho uske beech mein, So Salman Khan will hit someone, then cut, break, surf ka ad. That's how it works. So I mean, these are really the models. Now all the variations happening is just variants to this theme. So if you take pay-per-view is like a theater ticket, which is that I want to see this movie. I don't want your monthly subscription. I just want to watch this movie. So I'll pay per view, right? I'm willing to take a monthly subscription. Wonderful. I'm willing to take an annual subscription. Wonderful. I'm willing to do freemium, which is ki, okay, I'll pay you some money, but I won't pay you too much money. So आप मेरे को थोड़े ऐड दिखाओ, but बहुत ज़्यादा मत. Either way, whatever it takes. So in a sense, the thing is that finally to create content costs a lot of money, and for it to reach audiences and to entertain them and to inform them, somebody has to pay for it. So I mean, you've got to figure out whether it's ad supported or not ad supported, and then just go from there. That's all. Actually, that's all there is to it. People make too much of a mystery out of all this. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. So now we come a very crisp view I would want on this, this binge watching and all these different options open to the audience now, and these more revenue models coming up. How do we look at multiplexes and customer experience in this era of, with the evolution of OTT space? How do you look at customer experience in OTT space?
See, I think what happens typically in any business, and it's not just the OTT space, but in any kind of environment, is that there is this concept of cross-industry experience, right? So in a way, what it means is that if suppose you have gone to a bank and if you had a wonderful experience at the bank, great service, great this, everything went off orderly and nicely. You as a consumer, when you come out of the bank and then you go to a restaurant, in your head, you expect this, right? Because your quality standard has risen, right? Now, when you look at 20, 30 years of our society evolving, we as a country and as a people have got to a higher standard of quality. We expect it, right? So when you come to OTT and you come to a streaming service, why does everyone say, oh, Netflix is so wonderful and something else doesn't work as well? It's because Netflix has set the benchmark on how a service should actually work, right? It's intuitive, it's intelligent, it doesn't stop, it doesn't lag, it finds things for you easily, it remembers you, it remembers what you are watching, it makes you recommendations. So they have set the gold standard of how it should work, right? So I think customer experience is in general just improving. So even now, like now, once the pandemic is over, assuming it's done and we are all vaccinated, we will all go back to theaters. Of course, we'll go back to theaters. But our expectation from theaters will be that they should be better, they should be cleaner, there should be better service, it should be more cost effective. You shouldn't drop me blind selling me samosas and popcorn. I mean, there are a variety of factors that are at play, right? Because otherwise I have an option. I can just watch it in my house, on my screen or on my device. So I think in general, the consumer is coming across now, all the delivery services have started, right? So now we've got an Amazon and the whole e-commerce world and now the whole delivery world. So finally, when a Swiggy comes and gives you something in 10 minutes flat or 15 minutes flat, it is lifting up your consumer experience. So now when Swiggy gives it to you in 15 minutes, you expect the next guy to give it to you in 15 minutes. Right? And the next guy might be selling you a tire for all you care, But your thing is that Swiggy wale bahut jaldi lata hai. It's just a thing. So I think that's what happens. So I think the streaming business is 2-3 things are at play. One is, of course, the quality of technology, so that you're able to watch it in a seamless manner. Two is the quality of the content, right? As to, if somebody tells a great story, your expectation is that everyone else must tell the same great story or equally great stories. And then the third thing, of course, is that if all that people do is give you a version of TV, then why bother? Right? So TV is already there, and TV gives you a certain kind of content. So your expectation from the streaming services is that you must give me more, you must give me new, you must give me different, you must be more edgy, you must be more, you must push the envelope. If suppose I make a show which is a version of Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, why would you bother with it, right?
So, very quickly, and would like to understand that can a content creator in that case, can the content creator get some benefit out of these digital strategies like these telecom service providers, for instance, like bundling of OTT services? Would that be the need of the hour going forward? Would that be the likely strategy that you look at?
Well, when you say benefit of, there's always this challenge between a creator who tends to be like, a more, it's a smaller, more individualistic kind of thing that then gets sort of clubbed into, say, a studio like ours, where we work with a bunch of creators. But even us are small because we are still a B2B business in that sense. Then you come to the big distributors. So whether you take the big telecom platforms, or you take the big streaming services, or you take a YouTube or a Google or a Facebook or whatever, they're the big giant B2C platforms. They are the aggregators, right? Right? And then they tend to become very monopolistic gatekeepers. So they also control. So it's always a struggle between creation and distribution, right? Distribution tends to drift towards aggregation and monopolistic control, right? And creation is always trying to break out, saying, oh, I got a different idea, I got a different thing. The problem for content is that content must reach audiences, and then it must be discovered by audiences, right? So a single content creator is like, one little diya in a storm, right? There's nothing going to happen. That's when you need the big distributors, right? But on the other hand, distributors require content because, finally what's happening is a consumer is in front of consumer what the screen, right? The consumer is not interested in how that became possible. You just press play. Right? You just press play and then it plays, and then you like it, you watch it, you don't like it, you don't watch it, right? So it's an interesting sort of battle. But I think creators require distribution, and I think distribution requires creators. So it's a funny relationship.
Correct. In that overall. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to club two questions which have specifically I've been asked to address when you are there. So one of them is obviously with regards to content strategy and your perspective on the regulations, OTT content regulations. And the second is out of curiosity, which everybody would like to know, is that whenever we see your content, apparently it is mostly crime based or scam, reality scam based genre, like say Scam 1992, the upcoming Telugu scam, or maybe criminal justice. So is that a conscious move? And then your view on regulations, and we move on to the third segment.
First, I'll tell you about the content genres. No, there's no such conscious move. We do all kinds of things. So, I mean, yes, we've done a lot more crime and action, but that's also because it's a very popular genre globally. People like crime and action. I think what happens to an average audience is that your average viewer is not capable of committing crime. Right? So we are therefore drawn to it because we are always interested to see how somebody else committed a crime. And then we are also very, very, it's a vicarious pleasure, that you want to see what they did, and then you want them to get caught, and then you want them to get, go to jail, and then you feel sort of, you feel vindicated. Ki dekho kharab kiya, to ye hua. So that's an insight, That's why you do it, it's very vicarious. So that's why you like crime, you like scams, you like people to do wrong because you don't have the guts to do wrong. And then when they do wrong and get caught, you feel happy, So it works. So we do that. It's just a programming insight. But no, we do so many other things. We do comedy. We do drama. Per se. We've done shows like Mind the Malhotras, The Office, Hello Minnie is a crazy young. What we call the genre is sexy scary. So it's it's that kind of. It's a young pretty girl who's stalked. Who's being stalked by someone. So it's that kind of genre. Okay. So we do different kinds of things, like it's not just one type of thing. We do all kinds of shows. There are, in general, in programming, there are more popular genres. Like in general, people like crime and thriller, of course. They like romance. They like comedy. They like drama. They like period, those kinds of shows, historical shows. So these are broadly, popular genres. Everyone likes to believe that, oh, my story is unique and original and never been made before. But you must usually worry about things like that because, by and large, it should be, things that consumers like. With regard to regulation, see, we've always had regulation. Regulation has always been there. All over the world it exists. I mean, in the US, you have age categorizations and all of that. The Hindi cinema has always had the Central Board of Film Certification, which they call censorship. They're supposed to be certification. So, I mean, in that sense, it's always been there. At different points in time, the way society evolves is that different societal norms may come in conflict with creativity, right? May come in conflict with creativity. So that's a given in life. I mean, it would be absurd to say that, like there's no such thing as total freedom, that's not there. You have to follow societal norms and society changes. So as society changes, society becomes more accepting of some things and therefore it changes. I mean, if you look at Hindi cinema, you and me have grown up watching the minute there's to be a moment of romance, the camera goes out of focus and two flowers kiss, right? So we've grown up watching flowers kiss, and we thought if you were young enough and stupid enough, you thought maybe that's how babies get made, right? But we grew up, right? We grew up in any case. And I think our population also increased. So obviously no one believed that two flowers kissing story. So I think society is different, but within that, we keep telling stories and we keep pushing the boundaries, So now as we are progressing, we have grown past, like, I mean, I remember in the 70s and 80s, we used to caricature and stereotype the LGBTQ community, right? We used to always, they were always that type. It was like loosely referred to as chapkas, right? Now in 30, 40 years on, we've become so much more sensitive. We've become so much more accepting. And it's because that's how society progresses. So I don't know whether there's something really about regulation or censorship. And it's also the job of the creative person to push the boundaries, to push the envelope, and to be able to tell the stories. It's not about, I need freedom to tell a story. The most important thing about writing and creating is to be able to do it irrespective of your surroundings. If you want to change the world, you got to go there and change the world. You can't say that, oh, give me a clean blanket letter saying you can change the world. I mean, how dumb is that?
Sure, because I think as audience and as a society as well, we are evolving. And I particularly asked you this question regarding regulations, because in a classroom also, we often have debates about the absurdity, that how much is too much, and the language that is used or whatever. So now I think,
I think that the audience itself, the consumer, becomes the biggest regulator, right?
Yeah.
So there is a limit to what an audience is willing to accept. So you see, you can do anything you want to. For example, pornography exists. It's already there. It's there all over the internet. So, but why don't we put this on in our living room on a Sunday evening and sit with the whole family and watch it? Because, well, it can't be done, right? You can't do that. So I think what happens is that audiences themselves create a limit to what can or cannot be accepted, and that is what leads to change, leads to do new things. I think younger audiences today are so much smarter than we were. They are so much smarter, they are so much savvier, they're so much exposed to much better things in life. They see so much foreign cinema. We never got a chance to see all that, right? So, I mean, internet has really opened up the world to exposing people to so many things. So I think finally the audience decides.
Yeah. So the moral and ethical onus is on us, that how much is too much is for us to decide.
No, I wouldn't say the onus is on us. I would say that whoever does whatever, finally water will find its level. Water will find its level. Water always finds its level. It's not going to be that we can go on producing, mardhar, abusive, bloody this thing, and audiences are just going to go on seeing it. What will happen is that we'll keep making it and suddenly it'll flop because nobody wants to see it, and then they say, "Arey, it's a flop." And then everyone says, "Oh, what we need to do is make romantic love stories." Then we'll make 1,000 romantic love stories, then it'll flop. Then we'll say, "Yaar, kuch action banna hai." That is the cyclical nature,
Right. So yeah, with that we come to the end of the second segment, and I think I've had enough dough. But as they say, curiosity is an endless saga. We come to segment number 3, which is about student questions. And I will now invite the students to please, as I take their names, to unmute themselves, switch on their cameras, and ask the question. Can we have Shivyogi Biradar? Are you there, Shivyogi? If you can just ask your question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Please ask your question.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I'm audible. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, my question would be, how do you see the future of content creation with the rise of technologies like 5G, augmented reality, and virtual reality?
Well, I think, all of technology just helps in improving consumer experience. So, either it'll be improved in the distribution mechanism or in the consumption mechanism. Either way, I think content will always, be based on the fundamental of storytelling. So even if it's like augmented reality or virtual reality, it's still a story to be told, which is why if you look at all the games now in the whole gaming world, like your Call of Duty is such an immersive, actually it's a military game, right? You're going there and you're firing, shooting people and killing people and doing all of that. And technology has just improved it. It's improved the experience. but finally it's still a story to be told. So I think in that sense, storytelling will remain core to content. All of these technologies will help us in, different ways to do it, but it will have to be still based on a story, because like even when you play a game or when you do any of these things, it has to keep you engaged, right? Otherwise, per se, there's nothing in it. So even in the simplest game like a Candy Crush, there's a plot behind it, that you have levels and you have this and it keeps improving and all of that. So I think the future of content creation will always depend on this really age-old thing about human beings, that, we are storytellers and story listeners. So there are some of us who tell good stories, and then there are a lot of us who like to listen to good stories, right? So I don't think that's going to change in a hurry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Yogi. Samir, I still remember when I first saw the promo of Scam 1992, I had dropped in a feedback on your LinkedIn. And that is how this entire thread began. And I thought that I'm definitely going to have you on board someday for the students to get benefit. And I think the next question is by Itisha Gupta, and it's connected to Scam 1992. Itisha, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible and visible too.
So first of all, thank you so much, sir, for this enlightenment. My question to you is that before the huge success of Scam 1992, did you expect that the youth would have so much inclination towards the not so popular stock market and its jargons?
No, not at all, actually. In fact, it was a matter of concern. It did come up for discussions internally. When we were making the story, obviously our sense was that we wanted to tell the story about this colorful young man. And, in the 80s who came and he did this, he took the world by storm, went from rags to riches, and then sort of went crashing down. So that itself is a great story. But this matter was there that, that why will it resonate to a younger audience today? It's a story out of the 90s, which means most of you weren't even born at the time. And then, why would you care about all of this? So I think we took great care to make sure that some of those things were addressed first in the content, which is, the way the story was being told. You must remember that even though it's a period story, and that is one insight that we do for everything, is that even though it's a period story, I can tell you a story of Alexander, right? But the fact is that the story that I'm telling you about is when Alexander was young, right? I'm not telling you the story about when Alexander was old. So this story is really connected to the young Harshad Mehta. So it's somebody like you, your age, going out there, wanting to go and break into the big elite circle, being stopped from doing that, changing the rules of the game and going as a king, like a typical angry young man, Bachchan character. Second thing was the great dialogues, all of that stuff. Third was to make the whole financial world more accessible, to make it simple, to have a Gujarati twang to it and explain all this stuff. So we explained so much of financial jargon in a more simplistic manner. There's one point where I think Harshad Mehta is telling this colleague of his, Pranav, that Lala, गाड़ी को चलाने में और जलाने में दोनों के लिए पेट्रोल की जरूरत होती है. So then that is like taking great concepts and simplifying it into a more colloquial manner, right? And the third thing, of course, was the marketing, where, our conversations with Sony live, and Danish Khan in particular, where Danish told me, he said, I'm very concerned that why would people of today be interested in this? So I want to build out a promo campaign which tries to ask the question before they can ask us, ki, who is Harshad Mehta, right? So in fact, the first promo that went on air has that, Satish Kaushik character who says, ki, Harshad Mehta hai kaun? And then it goes from there. So it sets up the premise that, we are working on the principle that you don't know Harshad Mehta. Now we are going to tell you that this is the guy. And then I think as a story, really it's a young person's story. It's not an old person's story. It's a young man's story. I think it resonates really well because there are so many of us young people, all of y'all young people, I'm not so young, who, really want to, go out there and achieve stuff and, break the glass ceilings and, and you don't want to be sort of burdened by your, that you don't have access or you don't come from an Ivy League college or anything like that. So I think it really resonated with it. And everyone likes money, right? That's been an old insight, that if you can figure a way to get rich, then that's why not.
Yes, sir, definitely, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Itisha. And I think it has become humongously popular. Harshad Mehta, Risk Hai To Ishq Hai, and all the dialogues and stuff.
Yes, of course.
Another quick question by Shubham Mittal, and it's also, I think, connected to, you answered most of it, but if Shubham can just come forward and ask his question. Shubham, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible and visible. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I'm very proud and honored for you being with us, sir. definitely I thank my alma mater and ECEL for giving me this opportunity to interact with this great personality. So I have two questions. Definitely, I don't want to miss this golden opportunity.
No, but
So
you're
my first,
allowed to ask one because there are other questions also. They'll get angry on me if they're not able to answer. So I have to,
sure, ma'am.
to ask one question.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. So, so I just have a question about how was Scam 1992 conceived, and can you share some of the highlights which went in the making of Scam 1992?
The thing is that this is a story that I've been wanting to tell from a long time. I wanted to do this in 2012 actually, but I think that it was too early at the time. But I've always thought that this Harshad Mehta character and that period of the 80s was a very interesting period. And the other thing, of course, is that as a person, this thing about, like if you look at his career, like in 1980, he was like, a salesman, going from, door to door kind of thing. And by 1990, he was India's largest taxpayer. And he did not set up any industry. He did not come from any wealthy family. It's an amazing story. And it's an amazing story of, personal ambition, drive, intelligence, and that. So it's a great story. I want to tell it all the time. So I think when we set up Applause, this was one of the first things that we came up with. We thought that, so we reached out to Sucheta Dalal. She had written the book. I mean, she is the journalist who actually bought this whole thing out, and it's all thanks to her. So we got the rights to the book first. Then we, met with Hansal Mehta, and then Hansal Mehta, really was excited and he wanted to do it. So, he said that, all my life, every time I've introduced myself as Hansal Mehta, people say Harshad Mehta, then I have to say no, Hansal Mehta. So I should make it. So we said, yeah, of course you should. Hansal has done some wonderful work in the past, with Shahid in Aligarh, a very sensitive filmmaker. I had an opportunity to work with him at Balaji as well. So then we sort of got going from there, and then it took its time. It took us almost 3 years to make, because there was Hanshal got busy, there were other things happening. The writing took its time. We cast Pratik Gandhi. In fact, I don't have it here, but there's this clip of Pratik Gandhi audition, and then in the show, and it just goes to show what a great actor and what a great transformation he did. So I think, yeah, I mean, it was a process, and it was something that I think is important to do, because people always say that Indians don't understand finance. Indians don't like financial stories. Our audience cannot understand all these things. So we are happy to have proved them wrong, and actually I'm really grateful to the audience, because the success of Scam is all due to the audience, because we made a good show, but the audience chose to understand it. And that's the bigger deal. I mean, the very fact that you liked it is what helps us, because. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, sir.
So thank you so much, Shubham. And quickly then we move on to Netra. We have 2 more questions left. Netra.
Hi, ma'am. Hi, sir.
Hello.
Hi, sir. It's wonderful to have you here. And not to mention, I've been smiling throughout the session. And sir, my question is, there is this upcoming alternative platform, OTT, where actors' appeal is no longer the glorified attraction, but content definitely is.
Okay.
The content has become the primary and actors' standing has become the secondary. So what is your view in this regard?
These are all difficult questions. We have just discussed about how KBC was a big success because of Amitabh Bachchan. So, and also Kyunki was a big success because of the story, and you didn't know Smriti Irani at the time. So, I mean, in that sense, there's no right answer to that ever. I think what happens is that, the most important thing is the story. It's that what story are you telling? Then everything adds to it, right? So whether then actors add to, you can never take away from the importance of big stars, because big stars do things like get you an advanced audience, reduce the amount of marketing required, because you don't need to sell it. Like Salman Khan's next movie doesn't need to be sold, right? I mean, you don't have to tell people, oh, this is a movie. You just say Salman Khan, and that sort of moves things along. Then, of course, what's required is that the content must be good, the story must be good for it to work. So there are enough examples of big stars who have had flop movies, right? That's because the story failed. And there are enough examples of no stars who've had big movies because the story worked, right? There are enough examples of big stars who've had big movies because the story worked. So like if you take Dangal is got Amir Khan in it. It's a very, well-produced and elaborate movie, and it's got a great tale and great performances, and it's also a wide hit. So, I don't think that there is any such thing that, stars don't work or work. I think you should go back to first principles, which is always that, is this a story that is worth telling, and should we tell it now? Right?
Okay, based on story, you mean concepts?
It's only that. It's only that. So, like often the question always is, why now? Why must we tell this story now? And then, is it worth telling this story? And if you can answer that question well enough, then whoever's the actor, whatever.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Netra. Thank you. And yeah, I think, Samir, I remember I had asked a similar question to Shujit Sarkar after the release of, I think that was Piku.
Piku.
Why did he find the need to have a big star like Mr. Bachchan when he already had Vicky Donor? And I think a similar answer came that he said content is the king, but somewhere I need to reach out to people as well. So
yeah, and honestly, in Piku, if you take Piku as an example, I don't think Piku was Amitabh Bachchan the star as much as Amitabh Bachchan the actor.
Yeah.
It's really...
I agree. I definitely do agree. Yeah, we have one last question in this segment by Karan Pardeshi. Karan, could you please quickly unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, I'm audible and visible, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Clear. Go ahead.
So, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, my question is, as a student with an ICT background and an MBA degree in digital and telecom, if I wish to make a career in the content space, what are the options available for a young aspiring entrepreneur like me?
Well, there are many options available. So if there's obviously in this business, there's the business part of the industry. There is the creative part of the industry. So one would be, what is your leaning towards? Is it towards business or towards creative?
So it is towards business.
If it's towards business, then, in this thing, you have the creators business, which is the studios and that kind. You have the distributors business, which is the platforms and the streamers and all of that. It could be channels, any of that. So it's really those two parts. And I think there are great opportunities. I think this business is going to grow like spectacularly because, like if you look at the streaming business, we've got to, I think currently the subscription streamers are about 20-30 million paying subscribers. I think India can get to 500 million paying subscribers. So the scope for growth is immense. You've got all the foreign players now coming into the business. You've got all the big TV channels here. You've got so much content being created, devices, telecom, all of that. One piece of advice I can tell you is that, getting into this business, it's important to understand every aspect of the business. So oftentimes, people get into the numbers game and they understand the numbers really well, but then they don't understand the soul behind the numbers, that what is actually making those numbers sort of dance, if you will. Right. So I think like any other business, but more so in our business, there is a science, there is an art, and there is magic. And the more you sort of really, get to that, there's no point in being a business guy who doesn't understand how your product got made, and you should know what the factory flow is like, you should know how it happens, because that will give you a finer understanding of your business, right? Otherwise, it's an Excel sheet, and an Excel sheet can be misleading. So I have always in my life tried to do that. I try to definitely know how the Excel sheet works because that's really important. But I think you should know what it takes to make that Excel sheet tick.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the answer.
Yeah, so that brings us to the end of the third segment, and summing it all up, Samir, I think consumer behavior in the current context of which we are talking about, fear, paranoia, panic, it means that whatever information and entertainment we can get without physical engagement or interaction, is what we want, and which really means anything online, anything that is delivered through these mediums like the satellite, telecom, or internet. It is indeed the era of the mass of niches, and I guess the biggest beneficiaries, if anybody at all, is the Indian consumer, who I think today has more flexibility and more choice in terms of consumption. And they finally, I think they found their place at the center of the entire ecosystem. And I'm literally actually grasping for words to thank you for all your time and, sharing such lovely perspectives with all of us. And thank you so much. Thanks ever so much. It was
Thank
a
you so
wonderful.
much. Yeah. Thank you, all of you all.